What's up, everyone? Welcome back to InCamp Podcast. This is the show where we talk all hunting, all fishing, and all the hard-earned lessons that keep us coming back season after season. I'm your host, Aaron Hepler. Today, we're talking to a musky maniac, a musky expert. It's all things strategy, gear, tons of stories, lots of fun time on the lake, fishing for big game, and this guy knows how to do it, and he's got a proof to back it up. But anyway, enjoy this show. I know you will. This is InCamp Podcast. I am here with the master of Eagle Lake and the tamer of the muskellunge, Kyle Friedges. What's up, dude?
Hey, thanks for having me. That's I don't know if that's quite accurate. I'm not the master of Eagle Lake, nor am I the master of muskellunge, but I try my hardest. So
yeah, well, that's what counts. Muskies are definitely the most challenging fish in freshwater, and I actually spent quite a bit of time trying to catch one. I don't live in like a real heavily musky populated area, but there are a couple lakes around that they stock and rivers and stuff like that close to me. So I did a lot of shore fishing. So probably like 7-8 years ago now. And I had follows, I had one on the line, and I just couldn't close it. And now I have a boat and I'm like, man, I'll figure some stuff out. So I've been watching a lot of your content, man, and it is good stuff.
I appreciate that. Where are you're in Pennsylvania, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I have some buddies out there. They actually have a podcast called the Musky Hunks Podcast, and they're
Okay.
East Coast guys, mostly PA. So if you need some connections out there and are looking for some tips or guys to jump in the boat with, I'm happy to connect you.
Yeah, that'd be great, man. It's a real fun thing because you can spend a lot of time. There's some days you get on the water and you just want to catch fish, which that's what panfish are for. You know, like I spent a lot of time fishing for crappies last early summer, spring, and bass fishing most of my life. But the musky thing is you can get that same feel like you're shooting a buck out. You know, you can get the same feel as you're shooting a big trophy buck when you see that fish following him. And I remember the first time that I saw one following, right? I was fishing a spook in a river, and there was like a kind of a still pool that eddied, and it was raining, so it was kind of cloudy out, and they glow when that happens. You know, like you can see their green sides. And man, that thing, I had him like whacking at the spook a couple times, but he just wouldn't take it. And I was like kind of hooked for a little while after that. But man, it's an exciting thing, the musky game. I really want to know about you, where you got your start, and what kind of encouraged you to start Beyond the 8?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I'm Kyle Friedges. Victoria and I live in kind of the Twin Cities area of Minnesota. And how I got my start was, growing up, I didn't have like a real immediate father figure kind of in my early teen years in my life. And my grandpa kind of took me under his wing, and we started going on an annual spring fishing trip. And the first year we went up to Lake of the Woods, and then we went somewhere in northern Minnesota. I can't exactly recall. It feels like forever ago now, almost a lifetime ago now. And then we went out to South Dakota, and then on my fourth spring of doing that with him, so I would have been 14, we went up to Eagle Lake. And it was on that trip that I kind of fell in love with like the ambiance of Canada. I don't know. Have you ever been to Canada before? Up on the Shield?
I've been to the southeast part of Ontario.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. So what I love about Sunset Country, Northwest Ontario, is just the secluded feeling you get when you're out on the water. I mean, you may not see another boat all day. And that really hooked me at an early age. But what really hooked me was we'd go up in the spring and we'd be fishing walleyes primarily. And that was kind of the core focus of our trip because my grandpa enjoyed walleye fishing. And every once in a while, because all the fish were kind of in the spawning bays that time of the year and whatnot, you'd have a muskie that would chase a walleye up to the boat and stuff. And I remember being a kid, 14, 15 years old, thinking, that's what I want to be fishing, right? So when I got old enough to, get my driver's license and was working summer jobs and stuff, I had some buddies that wanted to start coming with me. And I kind of branched out from my grandpa, and we would get our own boat, just us kids, and we'd go out, and instead of fishing walleyes, we were like, well, we're going to go fish for pike. So we used a lot of blue foxes, like you talked about, and we
Yeah.
used a lot of meps and a lot of little Rapala jerk baits and stuff like that. And looking back on it now, we had no idea what we were doing, but we were out there, and it was the adventure of it that made it super fun. And it would have been 2014, I think. I caught my first muskie out of Eagle Lake,
Mm.
and I was just absolutely hooked. And then in 2015, I caught another. Nothing big on either one of these fish, but it was just the challenge of it. Like, we worked at it all week, and we finally got one to eat. And those were the glory days, Aaron. I mean, we'd go up there and we'd rent camp boats with
Yeah.
no electronics, no trolling motor. Like,
Oh
we'd
man.
back troll, or we'd just let the wind take us, and we'd cast, and really had no idea what was going on under the surface. And somehow we managed to catch fish. And then in 2016, we were up there in June, and I caught my first 50-incher on Eagle Lake.
Oh wow.
And that pretty much sealed the deal that, like, this is what I'm doing. And this is what I want to do in my spare time. So, years went by or whatever, and I had started my career, and I was very career focused kind of early on. So I didn't fish nearly as much as I would have liked. And then I eventually ended up buying a boat, and the pandemic hit, and I couldn't go up to Eagle for like 2 or 3 years. I can't remember exactly how many years it was now, but I just remember, like, a piece of me like never felt right each of those years, because I never got to go up to Sunset Country and like recharge my batteries and be where I
Mm-hmm.
like I think my soul should be, if I'm being honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Victoria would probably agree with that too. But yeah, we finally came out of the pandemic, and it was kind of late notice when you could go back up there. And I said to Victoria, like, I'm gonna go regardless. And my buddy Levi, who's you've probably seen in our videos from last year and the year before,
Yeah.
he couldn't make it because it was such short notice. And I said to Victoria, like, I'm gonna go, and you can come if you want. And she's like, well, I'll go with you. And she'd never musky fished really before. And I was like, well, I'm gonna buy some GoPros, and like, we'll just record this and kind of see what happens. Because I don't know if I'll ever get her back up there again, because she was never really a true angler at heart. She's always been, a bow hunter. And we recorded a bunch of footage. We got some pretty cool footage. It was a tough trip for muskies, and I thought I knew the lake pretty well from the camp boat days, and I realized pretty quickly when I had my own boat up there and stuff that I just didn't. So it was kind of learning it all over again, and
Mm-hmm.
we struggled, but we put some nice pike in the net that trip and had some cool footage. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna throw this out on YouTube and try and learn how to edit it, I guess. And then what ended up happening is I kind of fell in love with like the editing and the camera side of it. So like, if somebody were to ask me what I am, I would tell them that I'm a storyteller and a videographer first, and a musky fisherman is just my avenue to entertain people. Like,
Sure.
as much as I love musky fishing, like, the video editing side of it and the learning the camera side of it has been really fun to me. And it's cool because it's a skill you can then apply to other things. Like, Victoria and I shot a couple weddings last year where she did photos, I did videos.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. But the YouTube channel just kind of has organically grown over the last, 3 or 4 years now. So it's been kind of cool to see it happen. And I always said, I never went into this with like the expectation, like, yeah, I'm going to have a fishing show or something like that. It was always like, we're going to document these memories so we can look back on them in 50 years and say, like, wow, that was a wild ride. We had a lot of fun back in the day. And if something comes of it that allows us to do it more full time or whatever, then we would assess that opportunity if it ever arose. But we're not there yet, and we're just having fun with it still. So it's good.
Yeah, I mean, the full-time thing is kind of hard to jump into, especially when you have established careers and like you're used to making a certain amount of money and all that kind of stuff. And like, you also look at it from, do I really want it to become a job? Because it's also part of something that I just like to do. But man, between the two of you, your content, like, you guys are a power couple. Like, the content is fantastic stuff. Like the footage that you have of the lake and your boat and your catches and all the figure eights that you have, like, you do such a good job with it. And it's cool when you see it come from a place that you came from, drift boating, just enjoying the scenery, having fun, to like love to share it because you're good at the camera work, you're good at all that, and it's way more genuine. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things we try to really live by with our content is that like I don't want to talk down to people. I'm like a weekend warrior like everybody else. I probably take it maybe too seriously at times, and we just want to be relatable in our videos. So like I have no problem putting out a video where I don't even catch a fish if there's a story there, right?
Yeah.
Like because so many people go up to Canada and they may go all week without catching a muskie. I know the first week I was up on Eagle, every single boat I talked to or in camp, they weren't catching fish. And I was figuring out a way to eke out bites and stuff. So it just goes to show you, like, those non-catch videos can be just as relatable as, a 7-fish smash fest or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to show the highlight reels, like,
yeah,
because I think the thing with fishing that gets kind of like poo-pooed is like, oh, you're just out, drinking beer and whatever. Dude, it takes a lot of effort to stand on a boat for 12 hours. And especially when you're casting musky stuff, your arms are sore after like 2 hours of that crap,
yeah, it's not child's play.
Yeah,
it's real work.
Yeah. And you're also in that mental game because you might go all day without getting a bite. And, there's something that we'll end up talking about. We'll end up talking about like some feeding times of muskies, but you might go all day without getting a bite. And all of a sudden it's like, you kind of got to be ready all the time because all of a sudden, maybe 2:00, a random time to catch a fish or something, bam, you get a bite. And if you're not ready for it, right? Like,
yeah,
you're screwed.
They find a way to catch you sleeping every single time. It's pretty impeccable, honestly, how they manage to do that.
Yeah. Well, and it's like that with everything. And I tell people like, I'm a bow hunter at heart too. Like I love bow hunting whitetails. I love bow hunting in general. I've bow hunted a couple different things, but I love bow hunting whitetails. But there's nothing that I won't try and that I don't like, I went bow fishing for stingrays this past summer. I've fished for stripers in New Jersey, and I've gone fishing for sharks, and I've gone bow hunting for bears and elk and bird hunting. I like everything that you can do, though, will teach you something about the next thing that you're doing. But when you're after those, like the muskie, like I said, is an apex fish in freshwater, and they'll teach you so much about how to be on your game as the top predator because they're smarter than you at first. They're really always smarter than you, but or at least I feel that way. But you learn a lot that teaches you something else about the next thing that you're doing. What do you think separates muskies from other species of fish for you? Let's just say a pike, a muskie versus a pike.
For me, I think a lot of people, when they see you catch a muskie on film, and you'll see comments on social media on viral videos all the time where they'll say, why would anybody want to fish for them? They're hard to catch, and then they don't even fight, like hardly at all, which isn't always true, but a lot of times, yeah, they expel energy really quickly and then they're kind of done. But for me, muskie fishing isn't about the fight, it's about the bite. And there is nothing like the boat side dance in a figure eight. I mean, there's just, especially like you mentioned on some of the fish, depending on the conditions, you can see them coming from a ways out. And especially if you're running like a bucktail or something really fast in, you can see them screaming behind it and your heart starts racing, your knees get a little weak. And especially if it's a big fish and you do not want to screw it up. It's a lot like when you're bow hunting and you have a deer, within range or just outside of range, that's your target buck and you're waiting for it to come in. Like everything has to go right. And I've always thought, for me, I like the challenge of muskie fishing, and then it's all about the bite. And especially in the figure eight, there's nothing better than catching a muskie in the figure eight.
Yeah. I mean, I've only felt it once, but the power you feel in that initial, like, it's like, at first it's like you are stuck. And then but it's almost immediate that it's like, this rod's coming out of my hand. You know what I mean? And you got to hold on for dear life. And it's something that's really cool. And they are really, really unique. And I told you, we live like, so I have like a 2,000 acre lake not very far from me that gets stocked well with fingerlings, so not fry. They're a little bit bigger, which is kind of cool. And they do more tigers, but they do put purebreds in there. And I've not gotten to fish this lake, so it's something that maybe we can kind of dive into. We'll do a little bit of lake breakdown, but I know that people do well there, and when people are starting, this is maybe something that you could encourage listeners to do. Do you think, if you're looking at small impoundments like that, what are you looking for in a small impoundment that might say like, hey, this is a good place to learn how to catch these muskies and to separate those like maybe easier fish versus like a big fish that you're trying to target? Is it a target rich environment? Is it how you're fishing it? And what are you looking for as far as the lake goes?
Well, it'll kind of depend on the lake
Uh-huh.
and conditions. On a lake like that, 2,000 acres, it's not that big. You can actually probably break that lake down, if you're good with your electronics, in a day, pretty well, and have it pretty much mastered, honestly. One of my favorite tools to use is Hummingbird Auto Chart, which is basically where you get to create your own map.
Yeah.
It's a little memory card you put in, and it basically records forever. Garmin has it, Lowrance has it, everybody's kind of has their version of it. But even if you have a detailed lake map card, you should auto chart anyway. I just dropped a video tonight where I literally walk through live in the boat how I go about mapping out spots and what I'm looking for, how I place my waypoints, and kind of how I leverage that auto chart to really learn an area. And even if you, like I said, even if you have a detailed lake map card, it's not perfect. So you definitely want to auto chart it. But on a lake like that, the two things I would look for are, I would go online to your DNR's website and learn what the forage base is. It's probably shad down there if I had to guess.
How wives in this lake.
Yeah. So I would learn the forage base, and then I would drive around with my boat and determine if there's weeds. And usually you want to find the best weeds. And what I mean by that is you don't necessarily want stuff that's so choked out that the fish can't swim through it. You're looking for broadleaf type weeds, generally speaking. So a combination of learning your map, learning the forage, and learning the prime structure. Muskies want to utilize underwater structure that's adjacent to the deepest part of the lake, generally speaking, because what they'll do is they'll spend most of their time suspended out in the basin, and they'll push onto structure to feed or to digest, because generally the water temps are warmer up in the shallows. And during prime like weather events, like if you have a storm rolling in, they'll push onto that structure and stuff. So, if I were looking at the lake map, I would say, is there a large underwater point that extends out and then drops off into the deepest part of the lake? That's an area I would definitely look at. I'd drive my boat around. I'd figure out, are there rocks here? Is there gravel? Is there a hard to soft bottom transition? Is there weeds on it? And then also utilizing your electronics to see if there's bait, whether it's shad or panfish or whatever you have as your primary forage base. I know Wisconsin has a lot of perch. Minnesota is generally a Cisco based fishery. Some lakes are crappie based. And then up on the Shield, it's a lot of Cisco perch walleye forage base up there. So it kind of depends on your area, but isolating those large expansive pieces of underwater structure, or even small pieces near deep water, is where I would start, and then figure out, are there weeds on them, and is there bait in the area? And that's how I would usually start.
Yeah, that's perfect. This is you kind of described some stuff that I can think of on this lake. It's a Corps Engineers lake, so it's a drawdown lake. So weeds were kind of sparse, but in the last maybe 5 years, there is weeds in the moving, like in the tributaries that come in. So tend to be good. There's a little bit of current, and yeah, the primary species of forage there is alewives, but it does have a pretty large crappie population and bluegills and stuff. So, and there is a ton of carp in the lake too. So I do think they end up coming, into the tailwaters and stuff for to eat on small carp and suckers and stuff like that. But
yeah, for sure. If you have carp and suckers in there, you will find muskies in a foot of water back in that sloppy stuff, especially if it's muck bottom, because that's where the carp are going to want to be, and the muskies will push right in there with them. It's
Yeah.
yeah, we have some rivers in Wisconsin that are super shallow, and you find them up in that really shallow stuff with the carp and suckers and stuff. And if you like catching them on uh bucktails and stuff, there's no better way than top water, in my opinion, because it's such an explosive strike. And
Yeah.
if you like head shakes, you really get a lot of that with the top water.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to argue with a topwater bite for any fish.
No, no.
Everybody loves that toilet flushing. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
what do you think? What for muskies? We're going to talk a little bit about patterns. Could you describe how musky patterns might change with the season?
Yeah. Yeah. So it, again, it'll depend on your region, but I'll use Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, as an example for purposes of this. But before the spawn, which usually happens, we'll call it the first week of May to the last week of May. Generally, northern Wisconsin doesn't open until after Memorial Day. There's been some legislation changes this year that are allowing northern Wisconsin to open up a little bit earlier, and a lot of guys are going to hold off until that Memorial Day weekend anyway, just out of conservation or in the interest of conservation. But generally, let's say you can't fish till you come out of the spawn. A lot of times what'll happen is the big females will already be out. They will have come in, they will have laid their eggs, and then the males come in and they broadcast, fertilize. So a lot of times what happens is you run into a lot of the smaller males in spawning bays. And usually what I like to look for with spawning bays is a softer bottom with emergent vegetation kind of coming up in the shallow areas. And generally, if it's south facing, so on the north shoreline where it gets warmest first from the sun beating on it, that's a good place to start. Okay. Usually what happens then post spawn is the big females will be out roaming and in the open water, and they will be recovering from the spawn. Cause you think about a human woman's pregnancy, the toll it takes on their body. It's the same thing with wildlife, right?
Sure.
So they need to recover out there. They're usually out there feeding. So you kind of have this lull in June, and there's a lot of guys that have exploited or taken advantage of the open water bite when those females are out there, whether it's trolling or other means. But usually the males will kind of just push onto the weed edge for a while, and then the big females will kind of push back in there around the late June, early July timeframe. And that's really when the water temps start to hit their peak and everything's fully recovered and settled. Yeah. Weeds are kind of hitting their summer peak. And it's a lot of like weed edge fishing in Wisconsin. And they can be rock related too in Wisconsin. Usually what happens then is that pattern holds for about a month and a half, almost 2 months, until mid to late August, when you get like your first real abrupt cool down going into the fall. And then usually the fish push shallow. And this is one of the bites that people I just don't think understand real well when it comes to musky fishing. Those fish will push into a foot of water, and their back will be out of the water because they're just trying to stay warm as possible. And a lot of the forage will push up super shallow too. So I see a lot of guys fishing late August through September off edges and stuff, and they're just not having a ton of success. And that's because the fish are in a foot to 3 feet of water, generally speaking. So if you have large, expansive sand flats, like that's a big bite in Minnesota, especially on leech. Like guys will drive around with side imaging until they see fish sitting on sand in 5 feet of water or less, and they'll cast top waters up there and catch them and stuff, which is a pretty popular bite. And then usually what happens is depending on the fall, the last 5 or so years, the fall's been warm and weird. But let's say things cool down naturally towards the end of September. A lot of times the fish will then push back off onto edges until turnover hits. And you guys may not have it down there, but in Minnesota, Wisconsin, if we have a deeper lake that's generally deeper than 30 feet, we'll get a thermocline in there where the water basically flips then with turnover. The surface water becomes colder than the water below the thermocline, and everything rotates. And then it's kind of a crapshoot, honestly, for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then you hit the end of October, November, and the fish stage on deeper breaks where the bait's kind of piling up, getting ready for winter and stuff. And then it's a good time to, run deeper trolling baits and live bait and stuff and drop suckers on quick strike rigs kind of down a little bit further. That's a very popular bite
Yeah.
in Wisconsin. And then usually we have ice not long after that and season's kind of done. So that's kind of the general progression of things.
Yeah, we are finally just getting ice here, but it's like -4 degrees outside right now. So
Yeah.
we got dumped on last week with a lot of snow, man. So I'm kind of excited though. I would like to get a couple days in ice fishing, so it should be cool.
Yeah. Do you guys have all the gear for it out there?
I live on a lake, so my dad has a bunch of gear that I used last year, and I'm like, I need to buy. So I have like 9 or 10 tip ups because we can use per fisherman we can have 6 lines out. So
Oh, wow.
between jigging rod, I think you're allowed 2 jigging rods and 4 tip ups, or 5 tip ups and 1 jigging rod,
Okay.
however it works. So you're allowed 6 lines, which is a lot, but if you're putting mostly flags out, it's not, it's not too bad, just to almost as a fish finder rather than anything. But
Yeah.
yeah, I have like a hand dogger and stuff. So, because it's not, I mean, there's I would assume this weekend we'll probably end up having like 8 or 10 inches of ice, but it's not wild. When I was a kid, we would get 14 or 15 inches, but not like that anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
What about typical musky feeding times? Do you find that they follow like a typical animal behavior? Morning and evening is always best.
Oh man, these damn things, they're impossible to predict. I don't know. It depends on the lake, really. I mean, if you like Eagle Lake in Canada where we go is generally clear water for the
Mm-hmm.
most part. There's some basins that have clarity down to 15, 20 feet.
Mm,
Those are basins that you want to target when it's either overcast or low light, dusk dawn time
sure.
period. You'll have some fisheries in Wisconsin that have like no water clarity. And those are fisheries that you can pretty much get them to bite all throughout the day.
Okay.
I would say, 10 years ago, there was a lot less fishing pressure.
Yeah.
And a lot less educated and intelligent fishing pressure. Like
Sure.
if you can run a smartphone, you can master fish electronics in about 3 hours. Like they're not that complicated. So like there's a lot of guys that really know how to use their tools to their advantage. And I think that's made the fish more window oriented.
Sure.
And that may be like, you will hear in musky fishing folks talk about the moon phase and majors and minors when the moon's like directly overhead or directly underfoot or perfectly perpendicular to where you're at on the earth. Sometimes the fish bite during moon windows. I think in my first 3 or 4 Eagle Lake videos here, I only caught 1 fish that I included in the series. I've kept a few fish out of the series, but only one of the fish that I caught on film was not related to a moon phase. So the day I caught 2 and missed 4, I caught the 2 perfectly on the major, exactly 12 hours apart.
Wow.
On the exact same spot.
Yeah.
Which is wild. And then the rest of them, there was no moon influence that bit, and I ended up losing. So it's really hard to predict them. I mean, I'm of the opinion that instead of working around windows, whether that be moon, dusk, dawn, just spend as much time on the water and keep your baits as wet as possible, and that'll up your odds.
Well, so it's something that I hear from a buddy of mine, Tony Peterson. He always talks about when he's out of state deer hunting. Like he says, you're there for one reason. You're there to hunt deer, and you're there to learn something. So whether or not you're moving spots, or maybe you're just giving your eyes a rest, there's no point in leaving the woods, because you never know. Like, it could be 80 degrees outside and that deer needs to get up and go get water. You never know. And you might be there to catch it happen. And I think that in fishing, you kind of, like you said, in clear water, it might be a different story, but in fishing, you probably miss that a lot. Cause even with bass or crappies and things like that, you might find a bite at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when you weren't really expecting it to happen. And once you find that pattern, it's like you can replicate it everywhere, but it probably has a lot to do with the fishing pressure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I mean, you can't catch them on the couch. And
Yeah.
I've caught a lot of fish that weren't on moon phases doing weird things that opened my eyes to say, hey, maybe if I apply this to another area of the lake, I can have success there too. And I have as well. So, um, yeah, I mean, we all love to do this stuff, whether that's fishing or hunting or whatever. You might as well be out there, especially on a trip out of state, or like when I go to Canada, it's like,
Yeah.
well, what am I gonna do? Hang out in our cabin at the resort? Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather be out trying to catch one of these things,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, if you need a nap, you can always take a boat nap,
yeah, and I've done that.
Yeah. Why not? Why not? Uh, can you give an example of when one of those feeding windows, and you kind of describe this with the moon phases, when one of the feeding windows like didn't matter at all and you had success?
Honestly, if you have like the first video I dropped from this Eagle Lake series, we had an all day just soaker. It rained all day, and I had bites all throughout the day. It didn't matter if it was moon phase or not. Like, the weather conditions were just so perfect. It was flat calm. All of the cabbage stocks were standing upright if you wanted to fish weeds, and you could position your boat really well around rocks. You weren't getting blown around in the wind and stuff. So that was one of those days where it didn't seem to matter. On fisheries that are overstocked, if you will, or they're like brood stock lakes that we have in Wisconsin, where we'll take a lot of fingerlings and eggs out of to stock other fisheries. Lakes like that tend to be less window oriented just because there's so many muskies in the body of water. So it kind of depends on your body of water. And then, yeah, obviously the fishing pressure, I'm sure there's lakes up in Canada that you have to fly into. I actually know of a few. And I'm sure if you went to those lakes, you would catch muskies all day, every day.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't really matter, But
Yeah,
then you go to a low density fishery like Bemidji in northern Minnesota, and it's clear water, and you're going to need just about all the conditions to be perfect to get a fish to bite on that particular body of water. So
yeah, it makes sense.
that's the problem with fishing and hunting, Aaron, as you know, is the answer almost always is it depends.
Yeah. Oh, all the time. There's never, people always want a black and white. When you're like teaching somebody new, they want like a black and white answer. Like, should I use this bait? Should I use that bait? Should I sit with this wind? Should I sit with that wind? Like, I don't know. Most of the time it's like you make your best educated guess based on what you do, whether you've taken time to scout for fishing. Scouting takes a lot longer than scouting for a deer, right? I could go into an area on day one, out of state hunt, and find like a rub line that I follow into more dense sign with an oak tree and scrapes and whatever, right? You can do that on day one and probably be pretty right if you mix it with the terrain and everything. Fishing, scouting for fish takes a lot longer because you're breaking down a lake and trying to figure out the patterns on specific spots when you're talking about rock versus weed versus wood, whatever they happen to be on. And then you build that history, and then something changes in the lake just a little bit. And then it might only be 10 feet, but when you're casting, it kind of matters, right?
It matters. Yep. It really matters. And even like, back to the map conversation we just had on how to break down a lake. I mean, that's just like the elementary step, right? Like, that's like mapping 101.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is to just drive the whole lake and figure out what are the nondescript spots, right? Because there may be a shoreline on the map that looks like there's absolutely nothing good about it from a structure perspective, but the weed bed, this tiny little weed bed, is tucked in this corner of this lake, and it's so green and so pure, and that's what's holding all the bait and the most aggressive fish. But you'd never find it unless you go out there and actually scout it, right? And it's hard with fishing too. To your point, is like with hunting, it's visual. You can see it with your eyes. You can see the scrapes. You can, generally speaking, pull up a satellite map pretty quickly and kind of understand how the terrain flows, assuming it's a recent image and whether things have been clear cut or whatever.
Yeah.
With fishing, you're like dependent on tools to like help you see, right? Like, you need side imaging and down imaging, and nowadays we have live imaging and stuff too. So like, you can't just go out and really on a big lake anyway, like just visually see it. Maybe on a river you could, because you could see the bottom in one spot and not in another, and you could see where the
or
current
dark and
shifts
light
and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it seems like with fishing, you're reliant on your boat and your electronics to really kind of tell you that story.
Yeah. Is there ever a time where seriously downsizing your bait has helped you?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially on castback fish. Like if you have a fish that follows, let's say it follows a giant rubber bait in. Sometimes if you throw a small little glider back or something that moves really slow and just kind of walks side to side,
Yeah.
that can help. Generally, I throw smaller baits to begin with.
Okay.
I've just had better luck with them
Yeah.
personally.
I mean, I know guys that target muskies with bass gear just because
Yep.
they in the lakes that they're fishing, if people are fishing for muskies, they're fishing with typical musky baits, and guys tend to do better with bass baits because they're fishing a musky area, not dissimilar from the style that you would fish for muskie with a downsized bass bait, and they do well because of that. And it
Yeah,
might,
we had, not
nope.
to cut you off, but we had, my buddy and I were out and we watched last fall we watched bass guys catch 3 muskies and we got blanked that day and we had live bait out too. So
Oh man.
it's like a muskie angler's worst nightmare is seeing that happen right in
Oh
front of
yeah,
you.
for sure. And because you do like musky gear is not, you could, and maybe we can get your take on this too. Musky gear is not really, it's hard to find inexpensive musky gear, and it's hard to do it on a budget. And I'm sure you could. Um, do you have any tips for that for anybody?
Oh, it's tough. I would say out of all types of fishing, musky fishing probably has the biggest barriers to entry,
Yeah,
just because of the robust nature of the gear ups the material costs, and then all these
sure.
manufacturers and stuff need to make a margin on top of it to stay in business. So, um, I if somebody was getting started, I would keep it really simple. I would get a couple bucktails, nothing crazy color wise. I'd probably stick with like black and nickel colors.
Yeah.
We like to use, they're called Huntsy tail bangers. They're out of Wisconsin.
Uh-huh.
We like to use Musky Frenzy 8-9 staggers. They're out of Minnesota. That's what I would probably do for inline stuff. If you're looking for more traditional spinner baits, like if you fish heavy weeds or something like that, and
Yep.
you need a spinner bait, Big O's Bucktails makes a really nice spinner bait that has good thump to it. And then keep it simple. You probably need a tube. Every fish likes tubes for some reason. I don't know what it is about tubes, but
I
they
love
they
tubes.
work. Um, I would say you probably need a dive and rise bait like a suic as an
Hmm.
example.
Yep.
Especially in the fall when everything slows down. I would say you need a glider, and that right there will pretty much, and a top water. Don't forget a
Uh-huh.
top water. And top water is smaller is usually better, in
Uh-huh.
my opinion, especially for big fish.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, that pretty much kind of covers your bases. And I personally, when I first got started out in it, I got sucked into the hot new bait trap every single year. You go to trade shows or whatever, and you had to buy the hottest new bait. I don't know that necessarily matters all the time. And
Hmm.
I'm a big believer in color doesn't really matter. I
Yeah.
like a lot of times you'll see me throwing black and white,
Hmm.
and like that's about it. And maybe depending on time of year and body of water, I may like throw a crappie glider in the spring when the crappies are spawning, right?
Sure.
Otherwise, I keep it simple.
Um, I know I had a question written about here. So when you're talking about these different baits, I like this because it's something that every fisherman does is they do get sucked into that. Eye cast happens, and then everybody's like, "Oh, I gotta buy this." Sometimes when you try something new, it works really well for about a year, and then it stops working. You know what I mean? Like in bass fishing, they had and whopper ploppers still work, but they worked really, really well for a year. And then everybody used them and they didn't work quite as good. You know what I mean? But all those baits that you go back to for confidence, like for me, if I'm bass fishing, it's definitely a tube. I mean, that thing's been around forever and you catch a lot of fish on it, no matter what time of year or when whatever it is, like that lure has kind of stood the test of time. Same thing with like spoons and spinner baits and, your classics. So, what's important for you when you're building confidence in a new bait?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, obviously catching
Yeah.
instills confidence. The hard part with musky fishing is you don't catch very often, so it's really hard to build confidence in new baits.
Uh-huh.
Um, what I did early on was we would throw just a lot of straight retrieve stuff early on, and then you know my I call him my musky mentor, a guy I met up at Eagle Lake. He's a big proponent of Suix, and I had one in my box, and I said, you know what, I'm going to spend the next 2 days, and all I'm going to throw is the Suic, and I'm going to try and figure out like what makes it look good and what makes the fish react in terms of movement and all that stuff. And I think the most important thing to build confidence is just time with the bait,
Yeah.
honestly. And in musky fishing, you make a lot of casts, so you get a lot of practice. Um, it's hard to see how your bait's working when it's out on the cast. I mean, you can obviously see it when it's closer to the boat, but then the thing to keep in mind for people is the angle of your line changes as you get closer to the boat.
Yeah.
So how your bait reacts when you're making pulls like with a tube near the boat is a little bit different than how it actually reacts out on the cast. And
Sure.
generally speaking, I think people overwork baits a lot
Uh-huh.
of the time,
Uh-huh.
especially tubes.
Yeah.
Um, so like honestly, the best tool to learn whether your bait's doing what it should be doing is live imaging, because you can actually see it out there underwater dancing
Sure.
back to the boat and stuff. And live imaging is a controversial subject, but as a learning tool, it's unbelievable in
Yeah.
terms of actually like understanding how your baits work. But time on the water and practice with it will build confidence. You'll get a rhythm. You'll start to kind of feel like I got to pull at this exact right time on the slack line to get it to kind of do certain pops, whether you're working a
Uh-huh.
rubber bait or a crank bait or whatever the case may be. And that just comes with practice and time.
Yeah. I agree with you so much on just spending time. There's times where I'll want to figure out a technique uh like jerk baits. I was horrible at fishing jerk baits, but I knew it's a really good bait. I literally had to leave everything else at home because if you don't, you're gonna fish with it. It'll be this is me. I'll be 10 casts in and be like, there's no fish here, and I'll tie something else on, and I'm immediately not learning anything then. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have the time to do it, it is the way to build the confidence in the bait, because all you need for a muskie is a follow or two, and then you're doing something right, because that's kind of how you count fish in muskies sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the one species where if you see one, it's a good day, you know?
Yeah, for sure. How about sticking to a spot? How long do you sit on a spot before you say I'm out of here? Or is it the same idea with baits? Like maybe you should stick to it longer.
Um, this is a this is a hard question to answer because this just comes with experience, I think.
Uh-huh.
So if once you've learned your lake, you've driven around, you have waypoints on the weed edges, on the good rocks, etc. Uh, you kind of know after you've seen it all with your electronics what's good and what's not. And in my opinion, you're better off spending your time on the good stuff, even if the first pass through, you maybe didn't get what you were looking for.
Sure.
It's just a matter of time before that is productive.
Right.
So, I fish stuff very thoroughly, especially in Canada. Oftentimes in Canada, I'll fish the outside edge and I'll flip my boat around and then I'll cast it the opposite way and suck my boat in tight to shore and cast it back out,
Uh-huh.
especially if I know it's a really productive area. But a lot of that just comes with time on the water. And then, I know there's a lot of folks that if they fish a spot once that day, they won't revisit it, which I think is a huge mistake at
Yeah.
times, because just because there's a fish there wasn't a fish there 5 minutes ago doesn't mean there
Uh-huh.
isn't one there right now. I mean,
Yeah.
they're always moving, they're always swimming. So, um, I probably fish through spots a little bit slower than most anglers, but it also depends on what I'm doing. Like if I'm in Canada and I'm solo and I don't have a good pattern yet, I'm bouncing from spot to spot. I'm fishing fast. I'm using baits that allow me to fish really fast, get as many casts in as fast as possible and be efficient.
Uh-huh.
But if I got 3 people in the boat, I'll slow it down and we'll
Yeah.
pick it apart really good with different offerings.
Yeah, that makes sense because you have three people that can say, "Hey, they're working on this type of bait or whatever." That's definitely the method to do if you have more people. But with that, how do you If you're elk or you're turkey hunting, you can yelp on a diaphragm, or you can bugle or whatever, and kind of get the temperature of one of those animals, right? How do you take the temperature of a muskie? And we talked about follows. Is that how you figure out, like, hey, yeah, I'm doing the right thing? Or do you find that if they're skittish on a follow, that might matter and you have to
Oops.
change something?
Oh, I
Oh,
lost you
can you
there.
hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, you're back. You're back. Did you hear me there or no? You want me to?
Yeah, how do you take the temperature of a muskie to know if they're in the area?
Yeah, so I said, like, you heard the turkey and elk analogy. Um, how do you take the temperature of the muskie? Is it counting follows? What if they get skittish on the follow? Is that telling you that you need to tweak something, or is that just something that you did?
Um, I like to use a muskie call. So I'll come into an area and I'll call for them, and if they if they call back, then I know there's a few in the area. No, but seriously, honestly, it just comes with time on the water, and I probably fish with my gut a little bit more now than I used to 10 years ago, where it's like, yeah, it's flat calm and it's August and the weeds are in the best possible condition they're going to be the rest of the year. They're
Uh-huh.
probably in the weeds, so I'm gonna gravitate towards that. As far as reading follows, oh man, there's a lot of variables there, right? Because
Uh-huh.
some fish are boat shy. Like, just to take a step back, like every single fish is different, right? They have different
Yeah,
genetics, they have a different attitude, they have a different personality. Some fish love to eat in the figure eight. I caught a muskie exactly 1 year apart. It grew a half an inch, and I caught it in the exact same turn of the figure eight on the exact same bait, exactly
that's crazy.
366 days apart, right? So like,
That's crazy.
that, some of them are homebodies, some of them aren't. So there's a lot of variables that can go into it. Did you overwork the bait close to the boat, and then that caused that fish to spook? Um, Generally, what I like to look for is how aggressively are they tracking the bait? Like, are they
Uh-huh.
are they right behind it?
Uh-huh.
Are they lagging it, and kind of, I like to call it sleuthing activity, where they're like, you could tell they want it, but they're trying to put themselves in an advantageous spot without being seen to ambush.
Right.
So a lot of times you'll have figure eights where, like my buddy Levi, it took me years to get it through his head. Like, hey, when your bait's coming into the boat, don't watch your bait. Like, your figure eight should be muscle memory. Watch 15 feet behind your bait, because that's
Uh,
where they're going to show up late. And you need to be able to maneuver your bait, because you see them late, to put it in a spot where they can eat it. Because the figure eight is just a continuation of your cast, and you want to place the bait in a spot where it gives that fish the upper hand to eat the
uh-huh.
bait
Right.
effectively. Um, so, that sleuthing behavior, a lot of times then what I'll do is I'll actually like really accelerate it coming into my eight,
Okay.
and then I'll slow it like way down, and allow them to kind of dive deep and position themselves to come up and ambush on it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, yeah, like aggressive tail kicks, especially when you make the first little turn as you're coming towards the boat or to the
Uh-huh.
shore, or however you're fishing in your canoe, whatever the case may be. As you come into the boat, as soon as you make that first little turn, if you see their tail flutter really fast, chances are that fish is dead to rights, and you're going
Uh-huh.
to get them. And
Okay.
then it's really just a matter of, like, just don't pull it away too aggressively. Like, it's a cat and mouse game. It's a kind of a fine line of like keeping it moving so that they want to remain aggressive,
Uh-huh.
and not slowing it down too much to give them a chance to eat, that they lose interest, but also not pulling it away too fast that now they lose interest because they can't catch it. Right.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
that
there's a
makes
lot of
sense.
dynamics.
So are you finishing every single cast with a figure eight, or is it,
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah.
Ho-
That's like a non-negotiable for me,
Okay.
because especially in stained water where you can't see follows as easily,
Yeah.
like I will almost always do a big oval regardless, and slow it way down and allow them to ambush, if you will.
So are you going around once? Are you giving it a couple go arounds?
If I'm night fishing, I'll usually do it twice.
Okay.
And then if it's clear water and I make my first kind of turn and I come back through and bring it back around, I know there's nothing there usually. Um, so again, it kind of depends
Uh-huh.
on the clarity of the water and how confident I am that I've like thoroughly vetted the surroundings of my bait to say, like, yeah, there isn't a fish coming from the side or something like that. So
Sure. Dude,
They still catch you sleeping though. They
oh
like,
yeah.
even when you think like, oh yeah, there's nothing there, that's when they pop on it out of nowhere and surprise you. So
Yeah, it's coming out of the water and you have their mouth come and then you miss it.
yep.
And then you get your heart broken. It's like a deer spooking, you know? It's
Oh,
the
it's the
worst.
worst.
It's the worst. It's the worst.
Yeah.
Um, what about how often do you think that you overthink things and fish just off of memories?
Every day.
Yeah. It's like the easiest thing to do most of the time when you do any of this stuff. Like I know like, oh, like last year I hunted a deer here and it was this 150-inch, but like it's gonna be there again, you know, and it doesn't pan out and you don't see squat. Is that something that happens to you religiously on every trip until you kind of figure it out?
Yeah, I've gotten a lot better at reading the water over the years. So
Yeah.
like in my first Eagle Lake video from this year, I talk about how I fished a Clearwater basin the first full day I was up there. So normally I get up there on Saturday afternoon, you kind of fish the evening, and it's always a little bit of a crapshoot. But then the
Yeah.
first full day, I dedicated to fishing Clearwater, and I raised like 11 to 13 fish that day, and every single one of them acted the same. They'd come up to where the light would penetrate into the clear water, and then they'd lose like all aggression, and
Mm,
they didn't want to chase the bait around. And when it's 15 feet down, like it's hard to do a figure eight 15 feet down, even with a 10-foot rod, you know? So like
sure.
it was really hard to keep them engaged. And it was at that point where I kind of realized like, okay, given my years of experience, this basin isn't where I need to spend my time.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm going to go find something a little different and experiment tomorrow with it to figure out where they are. But yeah, there's one spot I really love on Eagle that I catch a lot of fish on that I don't include in my videos because I don't want to spot burn it.
Yeah.
And the fish, I caught a couple of fish off of it during my solo week that I will not make my series, but I never saw another fish, but I would hit it almost every day.
Yeah.
And that was just old memories dying really hard.
Yeah.
Like it just,
It's the
I caught them
worst.
right away on the trip. I probably burned every fish that was using that spot. And then they just never cycled back in. And I just kept hitting it and wasting time and wasting time and wasting time. And now I'm like a little gun shy to go back there next year.
Sure.
But I'm sure I'll do the same thing. So,
Probably. I think we all have the moments. But what you did say was kind of important, and it's reading the water. And I think that's something that you do really well. And not only like, I mean, you kind of talked about electronics and the importance of mapping and understanding structure and things like that. But what are some elements that you think are important to reading the water that are just like instinctual or like elements of weather and things like that, or the water, like you've been talking about the water clarity, things like that?
um, there's a lot of different factors to consider. I would say like, especially in Canada,
Uh-huh.
and it kind of goes everywhere, but especially in Canada where rocks are a major factor for muskie habitat,
Uh-huh.
uh, the wind is really, really, really important. And
Okay.
because a lot of times what'll happen is if you're in a warming trend, the surface water warms first, right? So if it's windy, it's going to push all the warm water to one side of the lake.
Yeah.
And with that, you know, there's current, so it's pushing all the bait to that side of the lake with
Yeah.
the warmest water, which is where the fish generally want to be, and that'll come into play. So like when I go up to Canada, one of the things I like to do is I will track the wind direction 3 times a day. I'll take a screenshot on my phone of what it's doing so that I know when I'm going up to the trip, like, hey, the last 4 days it was blowing out of the west, so the east shore is probably where I need to be spending my time.
Uh-huh.
Now, what happened last year is it changed directions about every 4 hours, and there was no consistent wind. So, like,
Oh
wind
yeah.
was not a major factor for me. Water clarity can come into play generally on clear water lakes. You want to target those when it's overcast, stormy. If the light, like I said, if the light's penetrating down into the water column, it tends to shut the fish down. When it's overcast, you don't have as much penetration.
Uh-huh.
I don't think they can see up as well.
Right.
The important thing to remember is like these are predator fish with the eyes on the top of their head, so they're always looking up. So those overcast conditions kind of shield you. The clouds shield you a little bit more than maybe a bluebird day will. And you know, like all that stuff, it comes with time on the water. Like you have to get out there. Like you can sit here and listen to me talk about these things, and you won't truly appreciate them until you go out there and you experience them for yourself and you connect
Yeah.
the dots yourself, I
Yeah.
think.
Absolutely. I agree with that. What about losing a fish? What every time I mess up in the whitetail woods or I miss a bird or whatever it is, I take like a second or sometimes years to figure out what happened, right? And I'm sure you do the same thing. So what lessons do you learn from missed fish and how do you analyze them?
Oh, I've learned a ton. And
Hmm.
honestly, filming yourself is the best thing you can do because
Oh
like
yeah.
the footage usually doesn't lie. Like
Hmm.
if you screw something up, uh,
It hurts more though.
yeah, oh yeah, it does. Especially like Victoria and I always have these battles in the boat. Anybody, I mean, I wish like we could just like leave the cameras running to hear like the marital disputes that go on in the boat and stuff because like she's so talented um at like everything she does, but like musky fishing is like my thing and
Yeah,
she's so new to it that like I'm always like trying to coach her and she does not want to be coached by me and stuff.
sure.
So we always end up watching the film at the end of the day and then that's where I'll point out like usually what I'll try to do is like watch one of my screw ups first and be like, yeah, see, this is where I went wrong. And then we'll go to her or Levi after that so that I like fall on the sword a little bit firsthand. But um, when I miss a fish, usually it's I first respond with a bunch of cuss words.
Oh,
And
I know the feeling.
I'm pretty upset. And then because you only get so many opportunities, you know, like you're again, like you said, it's the apex predator. They don't just jump in the boat.
Sure.
But then a lot of times what happens is you get musky blackout where like you think you remember what happened, but you really don't, which is why again filming yourself is so important
Yeah.
to really break it down. But you know, when you film yourself, you can slow down the footage. You can see like exactly what went wrong. I see a lot of guys on YouTube and stuff where they will go into a figure eight, they'll get the fish to eat, they'll set, and then they'll change their rod direction. So
Oh,
they set, and the fish is hooked like this, and they immediately go over here with the bait. And now all of a
right.
sudden, you're pulling the opposite direction of the way you should,
Right.
and you're going to lose that fish, right? So, like, if you don't, it happens so fast in real time that if you don't have the footage to go back and watch, you think you know what happened, but you don't truly know. So, I don't know. I would say, like, there's a lot you can learn from those experiences and trying to
Hmm.
break it down, but filming will kind of tell you the truths behind it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, that's such a valid point. And it's probably the true for bow hunters too. I mean, filming definitely helps you understand what you did wrong with a shot or whatever. The only advantage to muskies is they don't run out to 70 yards and just blow at you for like an hour, you know?
That's true.
That's the worst. That is the worst, man. I think I want to kind of do some rapid fire things before we get you off here
Yeah.
because uh there's things that every fisherman likes and fishing can be tend to be pretty easy when it comes to rapid fire. So, but before we do that, I did have a question about this. How often do you need to take a break from musky fishing and fish for pike?
Not very often anymore.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it was a thing though.
5 years ago, you know, when you're still learning the paces,
Yeah.
I don't think I fully appreciated like, no, you just got to keep your bait in the water and keep after it because every minute that goes by that you haven't caught one makes you that much more likely to eventually stumble into one at the right time. It's
Yeah.
like an odds thing, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I don't do it anymore. And even Levi and Victoria don't really ask to do something different anymore either when we're up there because they have so much confidence that we'll eventually run into one of these damn things and put one in the boat. So it doesn't happen as much anymore. No,
Yeah.
I don't even keep pike gear in the boat anymore, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Yeah.
And honestly, you catch all the biggest pike on musky baits anyway. It's like a dirty
That's
little
true.
secret.
That's true. I love, and I'm sure you've seen, I love watching that fly versus jerk, that Swedish pike fishing I love watching that crap. It's so good. But
Hmm.
there's monster fish in your, that's cool. But, so here we go. Favorite musky bait. Number one, just one.
Oh, that's hard.
I know.
I would probably say a 10-inch Stewart Thriller
Okay.
or a 9-inch, either one. Yeah.
Uh, best Reel ratio.
8.1 to 1.
I was thinking that. Line. What's your favorite line?
I like fins braid. Generally, I'll run 80-pound big game XS.
Uh-huh.
And then on pole pause baits or big rubber baits, I'll run 130-pound because it has the same diameter as most 80-pound braids that are on the market.
Wire or fluorocarbon leaders?
If you want to get bites, fluoro, but I've almost had fish bite off fluoro in the
Uh-huh.
past, so I am pretty much wire, 49 strand on rubber baits, and then straight wire on basically everything else.
Do you find that it really changes the action of a lure?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like a bait like a suic or a crankbait, something that's a little bit more temperamental to your pulls and stuff,
Uh-huh.
will work better on a straight wire leader. Straight wire on rubber is hard because it's so unpredictable when you cast it that oftentimes the leader will get caught in the hooks and you'll bend a straight wire leader like immediately on your first pull, and then it's pretty much junk after that.
Yeah.
And then I think with bucktails, the straight wire actually works better to add additional vibration because the pulse of the blades will
Yeah.
transfer up through the wire a
Okay.
little bit and give it a little bit more vibration. So yeah, I do think it matters.
I did have another one here. Favorite month?
That is hard. I probably September when the fish are really, really shallow. We caught a ton of fish on top waters in September this year. It was so much fun.
Very cool. Clear or dirty water?
Clear.
What's your favorite boat snack?
Bacon.
Bacon. Are
Yep.
you cooking it on the boat?
No, I'll fry it up the week beforehand and just eat it cold.
So you got some bacon jerky going on.
Yeah, it's called boat bacon. My buddy Matt, he owns a company called the Net Buddy.
Okay.
He turned me on to it this spring when we were down in Iowa doing a little musky fishing in April, and I've been hooked ever since. It's the best boat snack.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite fish story that you can remember? Maybe it's your first fish or something that was memorable.
There's a ton of them.
Yeah.
I guess it would depend on funny story versus not. This is maybe a little bit of a longer story, but
Tell them
there
both,
was
man. Yeah.
there was a trip in 2023, I think, up to Eagle.
Uh-huh.
And it had been kind of a tougher trip, and we had been kind of grinding all day or whatever. And I asked Victoria, and Levi and Victoria were both in the boat with me. I asked her, like, if I was your guide, what would you rate me or whatever? And she's like, I don't know. Let me think about it. We've seen 10 fish today. We haven't caught one yet. So I don't know. Let me think about it. And like 15 casts later, she sticks a 47-inch muskie on a top water. Just an epic eat. It was her first, I think this might have been her first ever Eagle Lake muskie. And if I remember right, and we let that fish go or whatever. And I kind of looked at her as we were driving off the spot in the boat. And I was like, so what are you going to rate me? And she goes, 2.5 stars out of 5. And I was like, what? So we ended up naming that spot 2.5 stars. And then on this year, because she likes to give me a hard time, we're fishing a brand new cabbage bed that we found. And I got this fish to chase up on top water. And I pulled it to the weed edge, and it kind of veered off at the boat, and we double backed on it. And she was throwing a bucktail at the front of the boat, and she cast it up there right on the waypoint, and this fish came screaming out. She went around in her first turn, and I think the fish darted at the boat again. She came back down, and she kept going in her oval, and she hung it out there, and the fish came up and just absolutely clobbered it. It was like a beautiful, like 46, 47 incher.
Wow.
And as we were driving away, we like to name spots, and because we'd never caught a fish on that spot before, we're like, what should we name this spot? And she's like, well, you're becoming a better guide, so I think we'll name this spot 3.5 stars. So she upped my rating a little bit this year. So I gotta work a little harder to get 5 stars one of these years.
Oh man,
but,
I don't know. You're gonna have to make a boat lunch that's impeccable or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to cook them shore lunch or something
Yeah.
one of these years. But
yeah.
Is
there a place that you haven't fished that you would kind of be like a destination spot for you?
Oh, there's a ton of them. I was actually debating on doing starting to do a third week in Canada every summer and going to a different lake, like different destination lake. There's so many in Northwest Ontario that I want to go to and film. I mean, Lac Sewell's one that immediately comes to mind. That's maybe like, I really like Eagle because of the deep basin, clear water style of fishing that it is. Lac Sewell would be more shallow reservoir kind of fishing where the muskies are at. So, but then there's other lakes up there that I'd love to get to. I'd love to fish Wabigoon. That's like coffee stained water. That would be really close combat, shallow water, bucktails, top water stuff. I think that'd be a ton of fun. There's a few smaller lakes up there like Canyon and Cedar and some of those other ones that are up in that area that I'd like to check out at some point. I mean, there's just so much to explore. And then I love like the off the beaten path stuff too. So like, I had a guy, he sent me an email and he's like, I know of a bunch of musky lakes that we'll have to take a chainsaw and drag our boat in there, but you should come up and film with me this summer.
Oh,
we'll
man.
document the whole adventure, and like stuff like that is like right
that
up my
would
alley.
be sweet. So,
yeah. So it's for me, it'll be like kind of looking and seeking out those opportunities where I can partner with the resort to go up there, do some filming and highlight what they have to offer on that body of water. That would be kind of the dream scenario for me to bounce around up there and do that at some point.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Dude, where can people find you at?
Yeah, we're kind of everywhere. Me specifically, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. And then our YouTube channel is called Beyond the Eight, and we do all sorts of outdoor lifestyle content. It's been very musky heavy because that's my main focus. We dropped an awesome video of Victoria's bow buck that she shot this past fall. Yeah. And then hopefully next year I'll have more time to actually be in the stand doing filming with her, which would be really cool. And hopefully she'll have some luck this upcoming year. And then my wife, Victoria, who you've had on the podcast, has her own podcast called She Goes Beyond. So kind of a play on our YouTube channel, Beyond the Eight. And that's really cool. It's like the only podcast that I'm aware of that's specific to highlighting women in the outdoor space, which is a really unique niche. And she does a good job with that. And she's on Facebook and Instagram too. Cool.
Yeah. Her podcast is definitely, I don't think I know anybody who is highlighting the ladies as well as she does. So, and she's had some really great guests on. So, props to you guys, man. You guys put out some great content, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me tonight.
Oh, it was a blast. I'm happy to come on anytime you want to chat muskies again.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening. Check out Kyle at the links in the show notes. Check out his YouTube channel. Check out his Instagram. You have to see this stuff. You have to follow it. You will learn so much about fishing and catching muskies. He is a wealth of knowledge, and he really knows what he's doing. So check him out. If you would, please subscribe to the show, follow it, rate it, review it, do all the things. It really helps the show reach more ears, and I so much appreciate it. I really appreciate the time that you guys take week after week to listen. It means a lot to me. So yeah, thanks. You can follow the show if you'd like at Instagram. It's at InCamp_podcast. You can email me at incamppodcast@gmail.com if you'd like to send an email about suggested topics or things that you'd like to hear. Thanks again so much. This is InCamp Podcast.